My name is Carolyn Trophy, and I have been working with the Madagascar School Project for over 8 years now. I'm one of the few people who have been privileged enough to visit the school many times over the years and have witnessed firsthand how our project is changing the lives of our children, their families, and their communities. This has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. I get to watch our students, staff, their families, and the surrounding communities grow. People are now taking control of their own lives. I'm beginning to envision whole new possibilities for themselves. The education that we're providing has helped to build self-confidence, foster imagination, and encourage individuals to take the initiative to shape their own futures. To help illustrate this point, I would like to share with you a story that helps demonstrate one of the most striking changes I've noticed over the years. The first time I visited the Tenequip project, most of the children I spoke to believed their only option in life was to follow in the footsteps of their parents and grandparents. In such a rural community, this usually meant farming other people's fields and rice paddies. The most ambitious child I spoke to was the 13-year-old boy whose greatest dream was not to become a cowboy or astronaut or princess, as we often hear in Canada, but rather to become a taxi driver in the capital city of Antananarivo. However, even this goal seemed to him to be so impossibly out of reach. Now, when I visit the school, the students are talking of becoming teachers, lawyers, doctors, accountants, and so much more. They're talking about their futures with such passion and excitement. It's like they've discovered a whole new world of opportunity. And I have to say, for me, being even the smallest part of this remarkable change is such an incredible feeling. These children now have the tools to mold their own futures. And this is made possible through your generous donations and, of course, our very dedicated team of volunteers. So now that I've said my small piece, I'm sure everyone is anxious to get on to our actual presenters. This evening, you will first be hearing from our most recent visitor to the Tenequip School, Catherine St. Pierre. Unfortunately, her visit was cut short due to the COVID-19 outbreak. However, the school seems to have made a deep impression on her, and she is eager to share her experiences with us. After that, we have Peter Ross, newly elected member of our board of directors, along with his wife, the great Reverend Fran Aird. Peter and Fran visited the school in the fall of 2019 and stayed for 3 whole weeks. They will be sharing with you their impressions of the school, the people, and the potential they see for the future. And then, of course, the main event, a presentation by our founder and personal hero of many Malagasy, Kathy Lucking, who will be bringing you news of the last 2 very trying years, along with the progress that has been made despite the pandemic, as well as part of our vision for the future. I would like to introduce you to Catherine St. Pierre, who will be taking things away from here.
Thank you, Carolyn. Good evening. My name is Catherine St. Pierre, and I'm a teacher from Ontario. I teach at Chesterville Public School. And like Carolyn said, I was the most recent visitor to the Tenequip School. So my volunteer experience was a long time in the making. In 2014, my family and I went to South Africa, and I just fell in love with the people, the culture, and their sense of community. And I knew that someday I'd like to go back for an extended period of time. So I came home and I began sharing those experiences with my classes. So they were part of the Toonie Twin program. I also had Kathy into my classes to do some presentations on the school. And eventually I began looking into volunteering at the school. So a friend and I had started to plan to volunteer, and my son, who really enjoyed our trip to Africa, asked if he could go. So he was 13 at the time, and the teacher and me wanted to make this the biggest learning experience possible. So I said, sure, you can go, but you need to raise your plane fare. So not to be deterred, he put out a flyer to the neighborhood and spent the entire summer of 2015 raising funds for his plane fare. So our neighbors were really generous, and he did a lot of work for everyone, and he actually raised his plane fare. But then we ran into a problem of not being able to get insurance coverage for him as a volunteer, just simply because he was under 18. So I put my own plans to volunteer on hold. I didn't want to go over there without him after all of his hard work. But the next year at the fundraising dinner in Morseburg, he actually decided to donate the money to the school. After being to Africa, he knew that not all kids had a chance to go to school, and that the kids in Madagascar would benefit from the money. So he donated it to the school, and I continued to follow the progress of the school over the years. And then in 2019, a good friend of mine went through some pretty significant health problems, and I just thought, we never know what's going to happen. If I'm going to do this, this is the time. So I started the year-long process of planning to be off work so that I could go over to Madagascar. And finally, in 2020, I was able to take off and head to the other side of the world to volunteer. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my experience while I was there. So it was a long plane trip, and then I finally landed in the capital city. I call it Tana because I'm not able to say the full name. And I stayed there for about a day and a half or so just to recover from the jet lag. And then the volunteer coordinator, Madame Villot, picked me up and we headed out to the school. Everyone, that's the capital city. And then we headed out to the school, and as you can see, it's quite remote. The rainy season really washes out the roads, so it's a long, bumpy ride out to the school. It's about 20 kilometers, but it takes a full hour to get to the school. And as we were heading out through this remote, beautiful countryside, I was just in amazement of how Kathy Lucking came over to Madagascar, to this foreign land, not knowing the language, and beginning to find land, work with the locals, and get this school started. Finally, we arrived at the school. And as you can see, it's quite a big campus. When I was there, there was 760 students and 50 staff. And I was greeted with a really warm welcome, which was lots of fun. The students really enjoy having volunteers at the school. And I'll just give you a little tour through my pictures of the campus so you can see what it's like up close. So this is Kathy's beautiful little home away from home. I was lucky enough that she let me stay here while I was volunteering. This is the gardener's home. The soil in Madagascar is a beautiful red, but it is very dry and hard, and it's just amazing the beautiful little gardens he has around his home and the gardens that he grows at school. This is the guard tower in relation to Kathy's house. There's some staff housing at the school. This is the newest high school building. It houses the science lab and the computer lab. There's 2 middle school and high school buildings here, and you can't quite see them in the picture, but there's 2 primary buildings at the front. This is the canteen and the kitchen. And on my very first night there, I had this young, oh, sorry. That was so to be. I had a young visitor. He is an incredible young boy. He acted as my translator many times because he's very fluent in English. He's the nurse's son. And these are the daughters of another staff. So they would stop by and they'd draw with me, and we read and just learned some English, and they taught me some Malagasy. And the oldest one really enjoyed talking with me as a volunteer and learning some more English. So while I was there, I was also involved in the Toonie Twin program. I would work with Madame Julie. She is a blind teacher, but she speaks English. So I would read the English letter to her. She would translate it to the children. The children would converse with her about what they wanted to say in their letter. Then she would translate that back to me. I would write out the English letter, and then they would copy it into their own handwriting and add a picture that most of you get with your Toonie Twin letter. So it is a bit of a lengthy process, but it was a real joy to see the children and how much they enjoy getting their letters. As you can see, your letters make them very happy. I also had the privilege of meeting my own Toonie twins while I was there. So because I had to leave unexpectedly, I hadn't yet met them, and the staff were kind enough to hurry around the school on my last day and find them for me. So I have Najara, Balika, Priska, and Asuka. So it was a real privilege to meet them. Recess was my favorite time of day. It let me get out and mingle with the students and just have a lot of fun. And they loved my camera. Everywhere I went, I had a little troop of followers wanting to get in on every picture that I took. Soccer is one of the nation's favorite games, and it is alive and well at the school. A lot of the middle school students spend their recesses playing soccer. And when I went over, I took some computers over, so I was able to give the kids the packaging from them, and they recycled it into some new soccer balls. So they were pretty happy with that. Some of the younger children like to play with chalk and draw on the sidewalk during recess in front of their classrooms. And there's another game the children play. They collect rocks and they play house, and each little rock is a different character. Some of the boys have marbles that they bring to school, and so they spend their recesses doing that. And one of the most interesting games I found was similar to Jack's. The manual dexterity is pretty amazing. I tried every recess, but I never managed to catch the rocks. I also spent some time teaching the little ones how to play duck, duck, goose and leapfrog. So that was lots of fun. And this is Madame Norina. She is the high school English teacher. She was teaching grade 10 and grade 12 English while I was there. And we became quite good friends. She would stop by the house after school to practice her English because she was also taking English classes in the city. So sometimes she had some questions about her homework. And I went into her classes, and the high school students just really enjoyed hearing about Canada, seeing pictures of Canada and my family. They were particularly interested in a video that I had of my son playing ice hockey. And that was just lots of fun. And I also helped teach a few lessons. One of them was a recipe for cinnamon rolls. So I talked to the students about the vocabulary of a recipe. And then we had planned to make those cinnamon rolls in the outdoor oven. But unfortunately, I ran out of time before I had to leave. And these are the fabulous cooks. They're just a great group of people. They're lots of fun. They spent every morning trying to teach me some phrases in Malagasy and had a few good laughs at my terrible pronunciation. This is the kitchen facilities that they use to cook for all 800 people at the school every day. When I went over, I took over quite a few glasses, and within those glasses were just a few pair of sunglasses. So I gave them to the cooks. And for about 2 days, they wore them continuously, even in this dark, smoky kitchen. And then I found out later that my explanation, I guess, in French wasn't that great because they thought I had given them some glasses to protect their eyes from smoke. So we had a little chuckle over that. These are the beautiful gardens that completely surround the school. So I was there in March, so gardens were just starting to really get growing and starting to produce. And the beautiful lush rice fields, they surround the school too, so they're absolutely gorgeous. And this is a typical lunch at the school. The students all get a large plate of rice and some vegetable soup. The cooks are great cooks. The soup is delicious. And this is just a few pictures of the process of feeding so many students each day. The cooks really have it down to a science. The students all file in, they pick up their plate, they eat, and then on the way out, they help to wash their own dishes. So they start feeding the kindergarten students about 11, about 11:30, the older students start coming into the canteen. And by about 1 o'clock, everyone is fed and they are completely cleaned up. So they really do have it down to a science. When I went over, I took over some wooden carts, and with the intention of working with the kindergarten teachers to teach them about the play-based learning that we use in Ontario. So the cars were actually made at Seaway District High School, and they made 20 cars, and I took them over, and they were an absolute hit. So after going to the kindergarten classes, word got around and all the primary teachers wanted me to bring the cars. So this is a grade 3 class, and if you look really closely, the teacher, I think, is having more fun than the students with the cars. And even the grade 12s wanted me to bring the cars to their class, but unfortunately I ran out of time. This is some of the primary lessons. So I was able to go into a lot of the primary classrooms and see how they're incorporating music into their lessons. And this is another, I believe it's a French lesson. And while I was there, one of the other rewarding experiences was just to be able to help some of the community members. So this is the little brother of one of the students at the school, and the family came to me to ask for some help with some surgery. The baby was born with the cyst, and he was 4 months old at the time. So the doctors had said that he needed surgery by 5 months old. So they really were in need of some help to pay for the surgery. So on the night before I left is when they came to me. So I quickly emailed to Kathy and kind of had an idea of how we could come up with some donations. And by the time I was halfway home the next day, Kathy had emailed me back to say that they had secured the funds. So your donations help with things such as this, as well as the operations of the school. And just before I leave you, I'll leave you with one last memory. When the girls were over at the house drawing with me, Tavnia drew me this picture. And to my knowledge, it translates into education is the greatest legacy. And for this young girl to realize how important an education is and to enjoy going to school says a lot about the positive impact that the school is having on the students. So as you hear Kathy's update and the presentations from Peter and Fran, and the many initiatives that are in progress, please know that your support is helping to make a profound difference in many people's lives, and that the school community is truly grateful for your support.
So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, Catherine. Your pictures are incredible. But what I really enjoyed was that last message about the importance of education and the legacy our school is helping to build. Next up, we have Peter Ross and Reverend Fran Aird. Take it away, guys.
Manahona Tompoko.
Salama.
I'm Fran Aird.
And I'm Peter Ross. We live in Morrisburg, Ontario, and at the end of 2019, we had an opportunity to spend 5 weeks at the Madagascar School Project.
This greeting was the first thing we learned in Malagasy. Just like you would say hi or hello to everyone you met walking down the street, that's what they say over there, Manahona Tompoko, and the response is Salama. The next thing we learned was Misotre, which is thank you. And actually, when I was thinking about this, I realized that I can't remember the word for please. People were so kind and generous and seemed to anticipate our every need before we asked that thank you was the thing that we were saying constantly.
Our presentation will only be a short summary of our time there. Fran and I are both retired, I from teaching and operating a woodworking business, and Fran with experience in being a shepherd for sheep, and later for people as an Anglican priest. We both love adventure and travel. We had attended many of Kathy's presentations about the work being done in Madagascar and supported her work there, and when the opportunity arose to spend some time there, we jumped at the chance. After an extended flight from Montreal through Paris to Antananarivo, arriving at night and being met by Madame Volol, who took us to a hotel to spend the night before heading off on a bumpy 20-kilometer ride to the school in Ambibro. There we were warmly welcomed by the people who live and work on the campus. Now you look at this picture and notice that Fran is quite in her element, while I appear to be standing on a crate in the back. The school is surrounded, as you can see from the photos before that we've shown, the aerial photographs and others, by terraced rice fields, very beautiful and owned individually. It reminded me a bit of Canadian beaver dams, as the water is held in place to prevent erosion and to grow the crop. In a minute, I'm going to show you the sound, I'm going to have you hear the sound and show you the pictures of what we would be woken to at about 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun came up. The day length in the tropic doesn't vary a whole lot as it does in the northern and southern latitudes. And the seasons are defined more by wet and dry, but here's what would wake us up in the morning. As we span around, looking towards the south, you see the rice mill is in the center there and the road the students take to come up to the school.
Such beautiful country. I could stand on the bluff outside Kathy's house for hours. I didn't, but I could have, especially in the evening, and look out over those beautiful fields and to the hills. Very, very lovely place. So after the oxen woke us up at more like 5 o'clock in the morning, the students would start arriving about 7, and some of them had walked 45 minutes or an hour to get to school. They would arrive chattering and playing with their friends as they walked along, just like children everywhere. And Kathy's house is one of the first buildings they get to, and so they would be peeking to see if our door was open. That meant they could call out hello and Manahona and see if we had figured out how to respond. Partway down the hill, you see the rice mill that Peter showed you in the other picture. And Monday morning, the classes started for the week, and the younger children all gathered in front of the elementary school buildings for the flag raising and their national anthem. You'll see they stand at attention, they take their hats off, and if you watch in the middle of the screen, you'll see that 2 flags are being raised, the Canadian flag and the Madagascar flag. And then you'll hear the Madagascar national anthem. And on Friday, the flags are lowered to mark the end of the school week. The children sing very enthusiastically.
Looking back on the time, I realized we really had very little idea of what we thought we were going to do. We'd brought over suitcases of things that had been donated, as well as 5 computers ready to be set up in the computer lab. However, when we arrived, we found that the solar power supply in the lab was frayed in a few places and was unreliable. So we got that fixed up with a new line and added the 6 computers to the ones that were already there, and we were ready to go to town in the lab. The internet is good there, provided by cell phone service. We even had a Skype session with Kathy from the lab while we were there. Fran used her computer skills to assist the secretary to update the class lists for all the students.
I also participated in the Toonie twinning process when I was there. Julie Ratsimba, the teacher in charge of the letters that you receive, is always glad to have some volunteers to help her. She does speak some English and, of course, French and Malagasy, but I don't think she feels really confident much of the time to help the children write the letters in English. So they would come and they would get to work drawing their pictures. And in my case, Julie talked to them in Malagasy. They decided what they would say. She told me that in French, and I wrote it down in English and gave them the sheet to copy in their own handwriting. It was a whole morning, but it was a lot of fun to be with the children and hear them speak about their families and prepare the letters to send to you, their sponsors.
One of the other things that I was to do when I was there was to help choose and purchase welding equipment. Stefan, the young man who was doing the welding, had received basic training in welding. Many metal chairs and tables needed to be repaired for the school. He did this and was repaid with time to use the machinery to build things like door frames and window frames, which he could sell, creating a business for himself.
And the children enjoy the swings and the play structure. just 2 seats of swings for all the children, and they manage to have a few turns and then jump off, and it's your friend's turn then. And I really didn't hear too much squabbling about that kind of sharing. The play structure was also very popular with its 2 slides, and hard for us to realize that so many children could manage with just 2 pieces of playground equipment. But they had lots of other games that they played. Kathy showed you some pictures of those. And they also had this jump rope sort of game that they played at recess. I was not tempted to try it. Can you start the video? You can see it. So they jump and catch the rope with their foot and twirl around. It didn't seem the right thing for somebody my age to fall over the side. And again, they love to have their pictures taken, and especially in little groups. Every time I got out the camera, they also wanted to be part of that.
The kitchen uses firewood to heat the water to make the rice, and the firewood delivery comes from a fair distance away. Deforestation in Madagascar has been a big problem, and there are many programs to encourage reforestation. The balance is tenuous at best, as tropical soils are difficult to reforest. With so much sun, the transition to solar power is a priority. Another view of the kitchen, and outside the kitchen were 2 small, inexpensive solar heaters, which were very efficient for a single household, but just a little bit on the underpowered side for the kitchen here. And I'm going to just take you on a trip around the kitchen here in this little video.
Lunchtime, yes, the children all line up outside. I was really impressed with how well behaved they are. Children are children everywhere, but these children certainly understand how they have to work in such a large group. So yes, they would start with the youngest classes, line up outside the kitchen door, or the canteen door, go in and get their big plate of rice and soup and sit down at the table with their friends. And when they were finished, they would go out the other door and go up and get their dishes rinsed off. And the youngest children would get a drink of rice water. That was their beverage for the day. And you must remember that for some of the children, this noon meal is their only meal of the day. It's a generous serving of rice, and that takes them through. Many of the teachers eat there too. You'll see the white jackets, and Peter and I always had our lunches with them as well. And he mentioned about his relative size a while ago. The trying to fold himself into the little benches and tables was quite amusing for the children, and we found out before we were leaving that they referred to him as gigantesque, or gigantic by Madagascar standards. The picture in the foreground with the children all sitting on tarpaulin are 2 of the kindergarten classes, and we were able to share some watermelon as a treat with them. Some of them really thought it was great, and others were just not too sure.
The permaculture gardens around the school are also a site for learning for the students as well. They provide a variety of vegetables that add nutrition to the lunches for the students, and they expand the type of crops that can be grown and increase the income to the school as the surplus can be sold. But the children working in the garden sound like children everywhere. more of the gardens that were being planted at the time we were there. And of course, in these soils, fertilizer is a problem in tropical soils, and so composting becomes a necessary activity. Milling rice, the rice mill has been a really good side of the school and the community. Otherwise, they'd have to take their rice many kilometers to have it milled. But in this case, they come up to the school, and the mill provides the needed service for the community. The rice is harvested. The mill runs long hours. The rice is weighed, and there's a charge for milling it, which adds to the school income. There's a bit of noise in this next section. I just hope that that you can turn your volumes down if you need to.
The visit of the optometrist was one of the things that I was able to help with while I was there. Dr. Josham came out from the city, and he brought his little eye chart that he pinned to the wall of one of the small classrooms, and paced off the right distance to set a chair, and from there he checked the children's eyes, those who the teachers had referred to as possibly needing glasses, or that the parents were concerned for them. He had a finely tuned routine where he would check their eyes and their eyesight and make his notes. He'd brought a few samples of frames in his backpack of different sizes, and the children would choose the one that fit best. And they'd come to me to record their name and their class and their price. And in about 10 days, he came back and we gave out the glasses and received the payment. The glasses are heavily subsidized by the Madagascar School Project, although they don't cost near what eyeglasses cost in Canada. But the parents are asked to pay a small amount. It seems that we all appreciate things more if we contribute something towards the cost. But one of the options for the parents is always to do work around the project in lieu of paying cash. Just a minute. Where you see him with his back to us in the picture on the left, he suddenly jumped up from looking at some of the children's eyes and went out and gave quite a lecture to the parents. I didn't understand the words, but I found out that he was telling them that they needed to be giving more fruit and vegetables for the health of the children's eyes. I was very impressed with Dr. Josham. He was so kind with the children. Some of them were quite nervous, and the little ones felt they were on the hot spot to identify the letters on the eye chart. You know, the youngest children were just not too sure about some of those letters, and he was very kind with them and helped figure out whether they actually couldn't see the letter or didn't remember what it was. It was a very nice project to be part of.
Nine members of the medical mission arrived while we were there. In the week that they were there, they saw many people who lined up daily for care and would wait. Most were treated with acupuncture. The team doctors also identified other physical problems that were attended to, and also some dietary deficiencies that we corrected at the school.
And the time came for us to leave. It was the beginning of Christmas vacation, and the classes had already ended. But the staff gathered in the canteen on a Friday morning and made a speech, which Rav, one of the high school teachers, translated into French for us. And they presented us with some of the baskets that they'd made there, and took lots of pictures. Of course, every grouping wanted to have their picture taken with us, and sang us a farewell song. You know how it is in a language that you don't understand. We assume it was a very nice send-off. That's what you have to do. We promised to be back in 2 years, but COVID has put a bit of a wrench in that plan. However, we still hope to go back as soon as travel is reasonably possible, and renew the friendships and support these great folks in whatever practical ways we can.
As Carolyn and Catherine have both told you, the change that the Madagascar School Project has made in the life of the people of Amri-Brujo Their optimism, their health, their confidence in a better future is quite remarkable. It was and is Kathy's dream, but it would not have been possible without you, generous benefactors and loyal supporters. We look forward now to further empowering the people to raise up their own educated leaders from within their community and to find ways to continue and improve upon what has begun there.
Well, thank you so much, Fran and Peter. That was a great presentation. And I suspect you're not the only ones who are going to want to get back there as soon as possible. In fact, I think there's going to be a bit of a fight over who gets to go first once the airport's opened. But that's for the future. I also am quite jealous that you got to wake up to the sound of oxen in the field. I always get this rather obnoxious rooster. 5 in the morning, though, as well. He really does not seem to like me. And now, as promised, I will pass things along to our founder, Kathy Lucking.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see all the faces in there and the names of those who aren't there. Tonight we have with us a Malagasy person, for one, as well as several people who have volunteered in Madagascar with us. Lots of longtime friends and donors, and some people who are here for the first time. So I look forward to sharing with you a little about what's going on. The Malagasy people are a very strong and forceful people who don't easily get bothered by poor situations. They're used to living without enough. So when COVID came along, they didn't waste any time. The sewers got busy making masks for all the children. Hand washing, like here, became a many times a day event, and they were clever enough to put water up on top of a cement pillar like that so that they could control the amount of water that was being used, as we're often short of water. Also, they put washing stations outside the classes. We were able to have mostly the exam children coming back before the whole school was able to come back. And so we were able to space them and stagger the classes. We weren't able to feed them a noon meal, so instead we gave them rice to take home and cook for themselves. And students from vulnerable families who really counted on the noon meal were invited to come to the school daily and pick up some rice. The cooks who couldn't be cooking in the kitchen decided that they'd garden. And so they came every day, just as they would on regular school days, and they managed many gardens and got a lovely harvest, which they were able to sell at the market for the school. COVID hasn't been too terrible in Madagascar. They just had 2 main spikes, with the last one happening at Easter. So our school closed down then again. And we had, we think, 6 of our staff members who had COVID, but managed to get over it. This tree, this is the picture of when we take delivery of all our rice, which is happening actually today. We got 10 tons of rice delivered. So that's what the picture is, but I have the picture there to show you the tree in the background, which is called a ravtsara tree. And its leaves, when boiled, really help people with respiratory problems and control a cough. I use them myself when I'm over there if I get a cold, and it's quite remarkable. We're thinking that hopefully maybe one day we can start a business in selling the essential oil, ravtsara. So we didn't lose anybody in our village yet, from what I've heard. Of course, there are probably many more COVID cases than what are announced, because most people don't access testing. The people at our school took advantage of the time without students to work on maintenance. As you heard, the stoves in the kitchen were rather smoky, so they found some people who could make them some new stoves. And they're beautiful, and they don't create smoke in the kitchen. They also repaired furniture and downspouts And I gotta say, we've been so lucky, touch wood, that our solar panels have been working beautifully since we got a new inverter. We haven't had any troubles at all for, I think, the past year and a half. The classes continue to be joyful. Students and teachers love being together and are developing better relationships than in most normal Malagasy schools. And their teachers are learning to offer the students more experiences, hands-on experiences. So here they're learning how to make soap and measuring, and some students out measuring and taking notes. Also, as Peter said, he was able to hook up the computer in the lab, and the students can do some learning on internet as well. And music, the teachers have learned to teach music to the students who are wanting to learn. Our permaculture gardens are producing well. So on this day, all the children got some mangoazu, which is like cassava, at recess as a treat. And our bees made some honey. I think 3 times this year, the students were all involved with planting trees. As Peter mentioned, the land is very deforested, and so we have some donors who give us funds to plant trees, and the whole school takes part in it. Even the youngsters know how to use a spade, and the classes will take care of the trees that they planted. Water's been an issue the past number of years with climate change, we think, pushing back the rainy season that used to start in November, and this year didn't really begin until February. So a long stretch without water. And this is the amount of water that our school has when the students come back at the end of October to start the school year. And this water is actually 1.5 kilometers away from the school, and it's just a little dribble. So we have several reservoirs, and this year we're going to build another very large one, as well as our engineer went out to see how he could improve the source where the water comes from, the spring. And we have these big cement tanks that hold water. We're going to make them bigger and dig the source a little deeper. And then, as I said, back at the school, we're going to build a huge reservoir that we hope will keep the school well in water through the dry season, and maybe even have enough to help the gardens. And this year, we're going to build a new medical center. If you remember, we had a small medical center in years gone by with our own doctor, and he served all the community and had people walking 4 hours to come to us. He fell in love and moved to the city and married, and we decided to try using the village doctor, which we did, but the people really miss having our own place. We always had a nurse and a midwife there, but it's time again to have a doctor. And so this is during the time of the Humanity Medical Mission that came over, and you can see that it's just one big room with no privacy for patients and doctor consultation. So this is the plan for our new medical center that Tenequip Foundation is going to build for us, pay for us to have built. It has a consultation room as well as an observation room, an office and a reception area. And we're really thrilled that we're going to be able to offer a dentist. So this is the building going up. And the upstairs is going to have an apartment for the doctor, and also some room for a volunteer. We're looking forward to staffing it and providing the medication for the community, and also for our students to be able to have annual checkups. Scholarships, we're very excited that our first student is graduating from teaching college. This is Miura, who will graduate this July and come back to teach at the school. And here's a little bit that she wanted to tell us about.
I'm happy to introduce you myself. My name is Miura. I'm 22 years old. I'm single and I study at University of TKM, Antananarivo. The name of the school is IFRT, Institut de Formation et de Recherche Pédagogique. I'm very happy because you helped me in my study. For example, you gave me the computer, more money to accomplish my study. The L'équipe School, it is a famous school because it has many children and many teachers. The importance of these schools are having the hospital, the laboratory, the library, farm, and garden. It means that it helps the pupil for their health, their eating, and help the children to read the book. The school is wonderful because it educates the pupil to have a good character. To conclude, thank you for building school, for helping us in our study. My goal is to develop the school and my society. I always hope your collaboration with us. Thank you. God bless you.
Always nice when they smile at the end. So it's a long road for people like Miura. Through their high school, they have to write state exams 3 times, and their final exam, they have to write in the city over an entire week. So our students are lucky enough to go to the orphanage where they sleep mostly on floors, I think, and write their exams every day. And here's a picture of some of the staff at the orphanage and some of the children sending them off for their exam writing. When they finish, our principal has been helping them to apply for university or jobs, to teach them how to use the computer to connect with the rest of the world. So we were thrilled when Yara Sue and Valley Sue came back this year to tell us that they'd been accepted to the university in Antananarivo. And then they were joined by Mendrika and then finally Sanjin. 3 of them are going into chemistry and 1 into communication. And here they want to tell you a little about their studies.
Bonjour, je voudrais étudier en chimie. C'est important pour moi de continuer mon éducation parce que je désire de trouver un bon travail. Je pense que je deviens chercheur en laboratoire et je peux aider notre école après mon étude comme professeur en laboratoire. La meilleure chose de mon expérience à s'écouter en équipe, c'est l'étude, le voyage d'études. Merci d'avance pour votre considération.
Je veux étudier la chimie. Il est important pour moi de continuer mon étude car je voudrais avoir un meilleur avenir. Il est très lourd pour mes parents de payer le droit d'inscription, le droit pédagogique et l'argent pour louer une maison et d'acheter l'ordinateur. Je veux faire la recherche scientifique comme travail. La meilleure chose de notre expérience à s'écouter l'équipe, c'est l'éducation spirituelle. Je vous remercie pour tout ce que vous m'avez fait depuis la lycée et merci d'avance pour votre considération. Au revoir.
Bonjour, il est important de continuer notre éducation. Je veux faire être enseignée. Après lycée, parmi les membres de ma famille, il n'y a pas encore d'élèves qui ont continué leur étude. C'est vous remercier pour tout ce que vous m'aviez fait depuis le lycée et merci d'avance pour votre considération. Au revoir.
Je vais faire une étude concernant le chien. C'est important pour moi de continuer car je vais améliorer mon avenir. Je travaillais dans un laboratoire. Après le lycée, je vous remercie pour tout ce que vous m'avez fait depuis la lycée et merci d'avance pour votre considération.
This quote describes how we envision our role there in Madagascar. True leadership protects what is weak until it is strong enough to stand, and keeps gentle hands cupped around a weak flame until it can burn on its own. So we were very pleased that the community got together and worked to, in this case, improve and rebuild a bridge that had broken down between the two villages where our school is. So the whole community came out to help. We gave them a little money for cement and steel, and you can see they made a human chain and worked over several weekends to make a lovely bridge. So this is the kind of thing that we're really trying to encourage, so that eventually their ownership of their school will be in their own hands. We had some wonderful, unique fundraising this year. First of all, Julie Slater, a resident of Glengarry, came up with the idea. She's an occupational therapist who's a trainer for mindfulness-based stress reduction. She came up with the idea that she would give the course to as many people as would like to sign up, and the proceeds would go to the project. So we had a lovely 8 weeks spent with Julie, who's very capable in her role, and we learned a lot. And she was able to donate $2,100 to the project. Then we had Erin Graham Mitchell, also a Glengarian, who's teaching now in Sturgeon Falls, Ontario. She encouraged the students in her school to raise money, and they did so with a bake sale and a craft sale, and raised over $1,000. Amazing, they put their efforts to the cause. This is a group from Western University. The student second from the right is Alexandra Blair from Maxwell, and her friend Noor beside her. This group spent many hours making up a project that they would pitch to UNICEF, a very unique project. They had a school inside a bus that would travel in South Sudan to students, mainly women, girls who don't go to school, and disabled children. I was really proud of them. We talked at length about what things were like in Madagascar as they made up their project. And then I met a group of students from Copenhagen, Denmark. They were our biology students at university there, and they called me to find out more about Madagascar as they were writing a project on Madagascar. And they were impressed by the project, so they asked if they could do a presentation on our project to their class, which they did. And then they raised money, $750 they managed to raise on social media for us. And their professor, one of their professors, actually has a not-for-profit in Madagascar where she's helping to save lemurs and to reforest. So we're hoping maybe we can make some connections there to help both our projects. And I'm just thrilled to think that perhaps we could make a youth circle with all these young, interested and keen, smart young people working together to also help the project. They're all very aware of conservation efforts, and it's international. Andrea here from Brampton, Ontario, also found us on the web and was doing a project on Madagascar. And not only did she do a project, but she decided to become a Toonie twin. And she also offered to help Julie with meditation courses for children in her school. And this is Hazel Tilsley, a student that I was teaching in Nova Scotia. When she turned 8 years old, she decided to ask for her birthday, not for gifts, but for donations. So here she's providing me with her take, which was $35. And then she planted a whole field of flowers. Her parents are organic farmers, and she bought the seeds from her father and planted them. And then every Saturday morning went to farmer's market with her flowers all nicely set up, right through from July to October. And when school opened up again and the farmer's market was closed, she presented me with cash, $353 from selling all her flowers. Amazing. The Toonie Twinning project continues with people giving $2 a week. We have over 400 children now being sponsored. This is Miota Yoti from the school, who's sponsored with Sky here in Nova Scotia. We send little videos back and forth sometimes. The children, this is one of the letters written by a class of kindergarten children. And I have more to send out if you haven't got yours yet. Just been a little slow with that. And this Christmas, we were able to get some little videos of the children wishing their friends a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Hello, John and Monica. I wish you Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. Good.
So I just want to thank you so much for being such loyal sponsors and donors all through the year. The needs for this year that we know about, rice is going to be expensive because they import a lot of rice, and importation has been difficult through COVID. And the price of all foods, but especially rice, has risen steeply. We're going to need lots of medical supplies for our new clinic. Permaculture gardens need manure and some irrigation work. And of course, our reforestation efforts. We'd like to have a forest there by the time we leave. Also, materials for handwork in the school would be much appreciated. Sewing and knitting, basket weaving and welding supplies. Yeah, as I said, people have been wonderful even through the pandemic with their donations. And but the one thing we're missing is not being able to make presentations. We don't have a lot of new people. And so I just thought if you would all just mention to one friend to check out the website and to join us on a presentation, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much.